Looking at this map of the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1692, you see a settlement at the very edge of the map. To the east lay the Atlantic, but to the west was a massive, untamed wilderness that felt both physically and spiritually threatening. Survival in this environment depended on absolute social cohesion. The Puritans lived in a high-pressure, deeply religious world where strict adherence to communal rules was the only thing keeping the wilderness at bay. But that internal peace was shattered by a series of strange, unsettling events. It began in the homes of the village, manifesting as a disruption that the colony's rigid social order was never designed to handle. In a place this isolated, the unknown is more than a mystery. It is a threat. The town's restrictive lifestyle had created a volatile environment where a single unexplained spark could ignite a massive reaction. The first signs were physical and terrifying. Young girls in the village began to scream and cry out without warning, their bodies twisting into violent convulsions that no one in the room could stop. These girls offered a chilling explanation for their pain. They claimed they were being physically assaulted by invisible spirits that only they could see. This left the town's elders and physicians in a state of total confusion. They lacked any medical or rational framework to explain why these healthy children were suddenly breaking down. Faced with symptoms they couldn't diagnose, the community turned to the only explanation that fit their worldview. If the cause wasn't natural, it had to be supernatural. Witches were living in their midst. What began as a local household crisis quickly transformed. The initial fear mutated into a widespread panic that the village leadership could no longer contain. The volume of accusations increased with exponential speed. The town's social fabric unraveled as neighbors named one another conspirators. The net grew so wide that even successful farmers and respected church members were pulled into the same web as the town's outcasts. However, the first to face the court were those with the least power to fight back. The initial targets were often impoverished or socially isolated women who lacked the community status to mount a defense. As the list of the accused grew, the drive for individual survival replaced any sense of communal loyalty, showing how quickly a society can dismantle itself when trust is replaced by pervasive fear. The chaos eventually reached the colonial courts, but instead of providing a rational check on the panic, the legal system stepped in to provide it with a formal, state-sanctioned structure. The fatal flaw lay in a specific legal concept. In the trials of several witches, the court relied on spectral evidence. This meant testimony from the invisible world, like dreams and visions, was treated as undeniable proof in a court of law. This created a legal impossibility. You cannot provide an alibi against a crime that an accuser claims happened entirely inside their own dream. By giving superstition the force of law, the justice system ensured that the outcome was decided before the trials even began. To be named was to be convicted. These legal failures were not just theoretical, they translated into a brutal physical reality for those caught in the tribunal's path. Among the accused was one man who recognized that the court was fundamentally broken. He refused to enter a plea or participate in the proceedings, knowing the verdict was already a foregone conclusion. To force his compliance, the authorities used a medieval punishment. They laid a wooden board across his body and methodically stacked heavy stones on top of it, slowly crushing him to death. He died without ever giving the court the confession it demanded. His death became the ultimate symbol of individual resistance against an unstoppable, irrational institution. Months later, the wave of panic simply ran its course. The fever broke, the accusations stopped, and the town was left to face what it had done during its months of delusion. When the logic of the trials was finally scrutinized, the absolute truth emerged. There were never any witches in Salem. The destruction hadn't been caused by the supernatural, but by a self-inflicted collapse of reason. The village had been hollowed out by its own hands. The final record of the tragedy is preserved here. Over 200 people were accused, 19 were executed, and one man was crushed to death under the weight of the law. These events stand as a historical warning of what happens when a legal system abandons evidentiary standards in favor of public sentiment. It leaves us with a question that persists long after 1692. Was it only fear or something more mysterious?